Howdy everyone and welcome back to Astro. Merry Christmas, and yes, your eyes do not deceive you. This is a new video, an entire year or so after our last one, but we're back, and also you might have noticed we had an intro. It's pretty minimalist, but it's an intro nonetheless, so production quality is going up, evident also by the fact that we have a new camera. Yeah, not using the dinky old phone. We are using a fairly decent quality webcam now, so we can get proper footage, I suppose, but get better angles, make things a bit better to watch, I suppose. So yeah, it's been a while. Been working on lots of things, trying to learn as much as I can about planes. I've been experimenting with lots of things, building what I can, and uh, so I've got some footage to show of a mildly successful, I think, project. This is what I've been referring to as the little plane that sort of could. Here it is. It's the second really foam board plane that I've ever built. The first was just a little F-22 glider to fiddle around with the material. I've done a lot of foam building since this, but here it was. I was quite proud of it. It's just ailerons as you do, elevator, no rudder because I don't really mess with rudder yet. Some dihedral, but as you can see here, it was not very even, and that was one of the issues with the airframe that we're going to get into later. And yeah, just use the same sort of electronics as I have with everything else. The good old 2-cell LiPo. Now, props are something we're going to talk about a lot here, but this is what I use near the end. This is what I've been using the most at the moment. This is a 4x5 APC prop, pretty sturdy. Yeah, so that's it with the basics of looking at the plane. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual details of the aircraft. It was designed early August using calculations from a website called Electronic Clinic on a page that I believe is called RC Plane Designing Calculations. A link in the description. Basically, what that website does is you give it dimensions for your wing, and you can use the math there to size the rest of your components, like the nose length, the tail length, and the dimensions of your stabilizers based on that. Now, none of that's definitive, obviously. I tweaked a lot of the numbers a bit to be more suitable, and you really don't have to do any calculations if you don't want to for an RC plane, really. You can just, like something like this, you can just eyeball it if you want, but I like doing the math for it, and since I don't really use that process anymore anyway, after this plane, I use basically a completely different procedure for designing aircrafts, and we'll look at that later on, but yeah, now let's have a look at some footage that I have of the wing getting built.
I've actually practiced folding this over for you. Just push it down. That's what the geometry looks like from the side. I'm here at my hot glue station, which is just the kitchen. I have a wing. Yep. Full wingspan, 70 centimeters, right there. It said it's done, almost. There's one thing left to do, and that is glue down these, glue down the trailing edge of the aircraft. Sorry, of the wing. You just glue it down like that, and then it's done. Oh, and add the dihedral. And then move on to cutting out the fuselage. One step closer.
Okay, so now that we've briefly seen the wing getting constructed on the 10th of August, let's have a look at the fuselage, the horizontal and the vertical stabilizers being prepared on the 3rd of September. Yeah, pretty big time jump between the two of them. Not sure why it took me that long, but yeah, let's have a quick look at that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the home stretch now. Here is the plans for the fuselage on the foam, ready to be cut out. I've got the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer and elevator cut. So all that's left to do is this. Let's get to it.
Okay, so those are the last few components of the aircraft being constructed / cut out. Now let's have a look at the completed airframe. So with all the primary components cut out on the 3rd of September, the airframe was ready to be constructed, and that leaves us with this beautiful photo from later that day. the plane, in all its glory, well, all its glory minus electronics, complete. So you've got the stabilizers and the fuselage and the wing all mounted together, and I thought, in my opinion, this was a really cool moment. It looked really nice, and yeah, it was cool to have the completed plane. Then, not too long later, I was able to mount all the electronics, and that gives us this. Not nearly as clean looking, but you can see you've got the servos on the wings with the little gift card control horns. Uh, you can already see here the mounting issues with the wing starting to show. We're going to talk more about that later, though. We have obviously the motor with, as you'll notice, the actual prop adapter is a lot smaller and a lot less blue than what you would have seen on this. Now, that one there is what people would be used to who have seen my videos as being on my plane, not this one. The story behind that is both very amusing and will be shown, spoke of briefly later in this video, I believe, and will be shown off in another video more fully. Here you can also see the skids, which are obviously not present in this and will not be present for most of my flights, because I continue to prove that I just can't make anything that taxis on the ground, and we'll have a look at that shortly. Okay, so we've now had a look briefly at the design and the construction of the little plane that sort of could. Now it's time to move on to what's really the highlight of the video, the flight. So how this is going to work. I have about 4 days worth of flight footage. Now, a lot of that is me sitting down, setting up the plane, and just talking to the camera, and afterwards sitting down with the plane and sort of analyzing what's just happened. We're going to leave out basically all of that. If you're interested, though, put down in the comments, and I might put out, I suppose, a compilation of all 4 days worth of footage in one uncut edition of the video that just shows all of the raw footage from all the flying. So if you're interested in that, put it in the comments. But yeah, so let's go right into it. So this is our first flight with the plane. You can see it's got skids on. So I can actually hear what's going on in footage. Put the headphones on and let's get into it. So this is my pre-flight check. I move each control surface and I say out loud what I'm actually doing, which was what that up, down, left, right was, and I look at the plane and see if the corresponding actions are actually happening. So there I chickened out basically because I did not feel it was going quick enough for me to be comfortable just letting it go. Notice as well, it shifts to the left. Have a look at this as it taxis. You can see it skidding to the left. That was the prop wash, right? Because we had a fairly big propeller with a pretty big vertical stabilizer. So the prop wash was an issue. I hadn't really got the thrust angle right there. In the air, it was mostly fine. On taxiing, though, it was not. I needed a rudder or some sort of wheel to counteract that. Anyway, let's see the flight. I was trying to cut out the language there, but it didn't really work. So what happened here, if we go back to just before, let's put the playback speed down to about 0.5, just see what happens. Now right there you can see as it starts to take off, it's rolling left already. And you can see it keeps that attitude as it goes. And then as I'm compensating to try and roll it back, it seems I might have either overcompensated or, if you can see based on that angle of attack, I might have even done some variety of tip stall. And then we hit the ground, knock the wing off. That's an issue we're going to see a lot in these flights, is rocking. And I think that's got a big part to do with this wing. So if I move this wing, you can see it flapping around. I do think that was happening in flight. It was a lot looser at this time. And the changing angle of the wing is obviously altering the lift, and it's causing this weird rocking motion. Now, on the second day of flight, we took the plane down and set it up to take off. Between flights, I do believe I must have stuffed something up in regards to the thrust angle or the actual position to which I set the plane up at on the ground, because the prop wash and the extent to which it turned to the left during takeoff was nowhere near as bad as it was last time, which led to this really unfortunate incident. Thankfully, it wasn't going fast enough to really damage the plane, but as you can see, obviously, lost the landing skids. So after destroying the landing skids on the first flight of day 2, we had to hand launch it. Now, this is a particularly interesting flight that I think we should pay attention to. Now, hear that snap there? That spelled the end of my orange propellers, which is one of the sides of the prop snapped off from the actual hub. Now, if we slow this down, because again, this is a particularly interesting flight, the plane takes off. Now you can see it rolls to the left immediately, rolls back to the right, which I do believe was me trying to compensate for that turning, and then it pitches right up for some reason and rolls over, leading to it crashing, which was not any action that was commanded by me via the transmitter. So I believe this could be one of two things: potentially a tip stall, but I think far more likely it is to do with this wing rocking that I keep speaking of. When I rolled the plane to the right to try and take it to counteract the initial left roll, it may have caused the wing to start fluttering like that and create unstable characteristics, which led to this. But I cannot. So after the flight that you just watched, obviously the propellers snapped. To get some couple more flights in the day, in that day, I replaced it with a small tri-blade propeller off a drone, which is obviously nowhere near the amount of thrust required for this aircraft. Which led to some pretty humorous attempts at a flight, really. So one I have footage of, but I'm probably not going to show here. It just went down right in front of us. It was really smooth and it was really funny as well. The second attempt, though, I wanted to get some enjoyment out of this. Told my dad to just absolutely peg it up as like powerful as he could, and he did so. And it went up probably the second highest of anything I've ever flown. And in my moment of incredible stupidity, I thought, cut the throttle, glide it down, which of course was ridiculous because it had basically no airspeed horizontally, vertically, of anything, which led to it falling down like a brick and this. So yeah, there it is. Wing snapped in half. Thankfully, after this, we were able to repair the wing basically that night, and about a week or so later, we got new propellers. So for the second attempt at flight on the third day, it was about a week after the second day, and we got the new 7x5 APC props, and the skids have been glued back on for some reason. Now, this was the second attempt. The first attempt didn't even take off. Basically, I was just trying to take off from the ground again, and I didn't feel the confidence to let it go from the ground. I didn't think it would actually get appropriate airspeed to have a legitimate flight. So I just went straight to a hand launch, and actually would call this pretty successful. Let's have a look. As my dad says there, it was pretty successful, and it was. I don't really see a need to go back and watch this at a slower speed because you can sort of get everything from there. As all my planes have, or all of this plane have done in every single flight. It takes off and does an immediate sort of yaw to the left, and then stays straight on from there. It was a bit wobbly, but I kept it level for most of the flight. And while we had maybe a shaky landing, it was still pretty good. We took the skids off, but from here, we just sort of gave up on skids. We don't really need them. Okay, so on to flight 2 of day 3. Yeah, so now that the skids have been taken off, we went for a hand launch, and I thought this itself was a particularly interesting flight. Let's have a look. Okay, so that was a fairly good flight, but it is worth us to put it down to 0.5 playback speed as I have been, and analyze what's actually happening here. So it takes off, does as it does, uh, rolls to the left a little bit, which was commanded to try and bring it down. It rolls back and starts oscillating, went too far to the left, leading to it coming down quite steeply. Thankfully, I was able to recover it, roll it back, and bring it in for acceptable crash landing. On to the final flight of day 3. Now, I'd say this is my second best flight of any aircraft I've ever built in RC. This was a fairly good flight, actually. Let's have a look. So yeah, really smooth. I was able to keep it level for majority of the flight. We flew very low, but kept it level. Flew it, went in for a pretty smooth landing. And all in all, I think day 3 was, in its entirety, really successful. So this is technically day 4, but it's not really numbered that here. This was the only flight on this day, and it was by far the most exciting flight I've ever had on anything. It was incredible, and it was really, really exciting for me. And now let's have a look at why. A quick analysis of what happened there, because I think this video really does deserve that, because it was just such an incredible flight. So we take off, hard left slide, as all of my, or as this plane has on all of its flights for reasons I've not fully identified yet, which led it to go in the direction of the road. And this tree particularly rolls to the right. I level it out, but it loses altitude, as you can see. I begin having to pitch it up over the tree, barely gets it over without stalling it, but thankfully didn't hit the tree. Now right here, the intention was to roll it and come down and land over here, so I didn't have to fish it out from the houses, basically. But it didn't really go that way. Right there, right into the tree, or the bush. But it was brilliant, and I was so excited here. Was it a successful flight? Not really. But was it sort of a legitimate controlled flight? Yes, and it was really great for me. And the excitement is really embodied by what I do right here. I find the plane in the bush, and it's intact, almost completely, except for a snapped wing. So I was, yeah, suffice to say, pretty happy with what happened there. Okay, so now that we've looked through all of the flight footage, let's talk about the project as a whole, the successes, the failures, and what has been learnt. Now, first I must say, the lighting is a bit different, and I apologize for that, but it is later on at night now, so I have had to put some different lights on, so you can actually see me. Uh, Before we move on as well, I must say there was actually one more flight than what we've analyzed. The plane in that one, I had changed the battery mounting mechanism, so it was actually a lot more tail heavy than my measurements had suggested, which led to, as soon as it takes off, shoots right up, hovers around like this. I lowered the throttle, spun it around, flicked it around, and came in and landed it on a bush. The reason I don't show this is, firstly, I want to keep the time a bit lower than that would permit of the video. I want it to be under 20 minutes. And also because my dad actually got lost in the sun looking for it when it shot up. He couldn't see where it was because the sun was directly in his eyes. So it was not really even worth showing the footage. All you got to see was it coming back, nearly taking his shoulder off and then landing in the bushes. But yeah, so now let's talk about the project. Lots of success, been able to make my first functional foam board aircraft, learned a lot about setting up servos, hinges, and control horns and everything properly, as well as first time using the music wire, may I add, the control rods, so that you get proper control surfaces that are easily actuated and have like the maximized and most sort of highest control throws achievable if that's what you want. I've also learned a lot about cutting the foam, beveling the foam, and actually gluing it, and also, I suppose, the design of the planes itself. I've learned a lot about considering things such as thrust angle, which is evident a lot in the yawing and the, sliding whilst on the ground. So I have been using washers now to set up the thrust angle. Something else that's been really important, center of gravity. I have to laugh every time I say that because it's just, yeah, I don't know, it just I can't really describe it. It amuses me every single time I say center of gravity because it's almost like I have a flash in my mind of every single thing that has been ruined by me not considering center of gravity correctly. It's a long list, but at least on this project, I really put enough attention into it. Enough. I put more attention into it than I have previously, and that was good. But we will be really thorough with center of gravity in the future. With projects I've currently been working on, I've to address center of gravity issues, I actually begin by making a smaller model of the plane and testing it with different center of gravities and figuring out how where it should be to optimize its flying ability. So we'd make a truck glider, put some coins and batteries to get the CG at a certain place and test how well it glides there, and go between a certain, go between 25%, 33% for a normal plane, and I go between sort of increments between there and see where it glides the best. A lot of times I find 28 to 30% is actually really good. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to put a lot of focus on in the future. To some degree, I've got experience flying, not nearly enough, because I didn't really get any proper flights. I'm still counting my flight time in seconds. I do not count flight times in minutes yet. That's the goal of the next plane, counting flight time in minutes. The last takeaway point from this plane is how we attach the wing. Yeah. Wibbly bloody wobbly, I tell ya. Absolutely ridiculous. I really need to work on that. And actually, now that I say this, dihedral. I have not mentioned this at all, which I just realized, but have a look from the front. The dihedral is not even. One side is on a higher angle than the other. That was a defect in its construction directly because of my incompetence. I need to be a lot more careful in the future with these sort of things and ensure that we have equal dihedral because a lot of my rolling problems are to do with that. And then, of course, space in for the electronics. I've noticed a lot. I have complications with the plane setup due to not having enough space for electronics, so that's important for the future. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. There will be a video coming out fairly soon, when I get it done, that goes over all of the current projects that I'm either working on now and everything I've worked on over the last year since you last saw me. So that should explain what I've been doing. So some footage, current models like top of the shelf over there. Got some planes up there that somebody might have noticed. You might not have though. Is angle it right. There you go. B2's B-21 Raider you might see. So yeah, I'll talk about that in a future video and other things I've been working on. For now, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hope to see you soon.